Galaxy 666 by Pel Toro. Session 52.
Bronet got off that train of thought and onto another. Suppose, he wondered, that this is designed to let the aliens through and keep out any non-alien life that might have managed to board the ship. Perhaps what he was really looking at was the Citadel, the Zion, the stronghold of these peculiar creatures. Was this the keep into which they withdrew when the outer bailiwick had fallen to marauders from the void? It was a primitive idea. Bronet recognized it as such. Yet, he told himself, it was not an idea to be rejected simply because of the innate primitivism which was inherent in its concept. The aliens were, in some respects, quite primitive. In others, they were either too advanced for the humanoids to understand the mechanisms which they used, or those mechanisms had developed along completely different lines from those which the humanoids were familiar in the Empire. Bronet decided that whether the grid was intended as a stronghold, as a preventive device, or as a warning device, whatever lay on the other side of it must be well worth reaching. There was a panel about 4 feet from that part of the ship in which he stood. It was made of the same old-looking metal alloy as the grill. Bronet was that rather happy combination of thinker and doer which makes for the successful astronaut or cosmonaut. Bronet, having thought out his position, decided to act upon the information which his keen mind had just finished analyzing. He put his hand firmly, resolutely on the panel. The panel tingled, or rather his fingers tingled when they came into contact with it. It was like an attack of pins and needles. The feeling became intensified, and a hole appeared in the center of the reticulated alloy. Bronet looked at it with interest. He did not remove his hand from the metal plate which had affected this aperture in the metal grid. The hole began to grow bigger. It seemed to draw back upon itself equally in all directions, rather after the manner of a camera aperture. It worked almost on the principle of the iris around the pupil of a living eye. Bronet realized the similarity, and it added to the bio-impression of the strange alloy which barred his path. But now it barred his path no longer. The aperture, circular in shape, was a good 3 feet in diameter. It looked strangely inviting. Bronet stepped swiftly through the hole and stood looking around on the other side. The passage down which he had moved did not seem very different now that he had passed the grill, yet the grill must have served some purpose. Ahead of him was a door. It was a big, heavy-looking door, but Bronet was not deterred by the size of it, or the apparent ponderous weight of the metal of which it was composed. If the grill had been protective, or warning in its character, this door was much more so. It served as a very reliable and powerful protection indeed. Bronet was particularly keen to discover what it was the aliens considered so important aboard their ship. The thought flashed through his mind that if these people, for want of a better word, were accustomed to some kind of hand-to-hand fighting, or rather pseudopod-to-pseudopod fighting, then it would be essential for them to be able to guard certain vital parts of the ship. The grill through which he had just passed, and this great metal door which lay in front of him were probably parts of such guardian mechanisms. There was a semicircular handle-like arrangement on the door, and Bronet got the feeling that this was some kind of opening gadget. He touched it gently, and, to his surprise, found it moved easily. The door was big and heavy, but it was not secured. More theories flashed through Bronet's mind. If this was indeed the door or something really vital like a control room, or the power chamber of the ship, then it would only have to be defended when strangers bent on plunder were aboard. The idea of an inner keep or bastion seemed more and more probable, in which case, thought Bronet, the door would be secured from inside. It was easily opened from outside, so that when the aliens drove the defenders back, they, the defenders, would have little difficulty getting in, and after they had passed through the curtain-like living mesh of metal, all they would have to do would be to disconnect, to deactivate the opening panel which permitted ingress via the mesh, and having opened the unfastened door which he was now handling, they could hurl themselves inside and secure it from there. The door began to move open soundlessly in response to Bronet's gentle manipulation of the handle. A few seconds more, and he had it open sufficiently to enable him to climb inside. All around him were banks of complicated-looking machinery and control handles. They were not designed for hands with the advantage of prehensile thumbs. They were obviously meant to be manipulated, if the term may be purloined, regardless of its etymological origin, by pseudopods. A white sphere depended from the ceiling. Every now and again, light flashed on inside the sphere and then went out. Rows of little colored beads all around the various control panels lit up and died down again. Bronet closed the massive door through which he had entered and pulled down a huge metal alloy bar. This was obviously the siege procedure. Another door of equal size opened instantly on the far side of the room. Bronet rushed forward as the alien entered. The alien was taken completely by surprise. Bronet was not a vindictive man, but he had not by any means enjoyed the weird experience which the aliens had inflicted on Ishklak, Korzak, Oski, and himself with their fantastic barrel-shaped freezing weapon. He had not enjoyed that numb feeling which had followed his exposure to that weapon, and his treatment of the alien was scarcely that which the courtly guest would mete out to his host. It was difficult to tell exactly what part of the alien anatomy he was hitting, but he hammered it both above and below decks with fist and feet until it collapsed on the floor in complete and abject silence, apparently feeling sorry for itself. Boots, particularly space boots, and the rock-hard fists of a man as big and strong as Bronet were much more than a match for the soft, rather visceral body of the slug-like pseudopodid alien. Bronet wondered whether he had killed the beast. He bent over it. There were still some signs of life as far as he could tell. He felt a tinge of regret. He had not intended to kill the alien. After all, the aliens had not killed them when they had had the opportunity to do so. On the other hand, Bronet wondered if the aliens had intended to kill but had misjudged the biotenacity of humanoid life. Maybe that bell-shaped weapon would have obliterated the vital spark in most creatures, even though it had failed to do so in Homo Galacticus.
Here ends Session 52.